Welcome back to Thrive Alive, where we host health talks for the whole community. I'm so happy to be back for season 3, episode 3, where we will be discussing an illness that is often under-resourced in the African American community. We have an expert with us here today, Dr. Jory Fleisher. And before we get started, I just want Dr. Fleisher to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and what led you into this work.
Yeah, thank you so much first for having me. It's such an honor to be a part of the podcast and to be able to join the community. So I actually grew up in a non-medical family and grew up with a lot of neurologic illness, a lot of brain illness around me. And so I thought that everyone had an aunt in a wheelchair who couldn't speak, who was just part of their family. And my grandparents kept my Aunt Kim at home when they'd been told after she was born that there was nothing that could be done for her. And basically the healthcare system and neurology at the time, back in late 50s, early 60s, said, it would be better if you just put this child in a home and let her pass. And thankfully we've come a long way since then, but I grew up with this amazing example of how to rally around a person with neurologic illness and how to keep them in the family and have them be an integral part of family and growing up. And as I got older and kind of learned that story of what had been told to my grandparents and how they had fought so hard for Kim to be present in everything, it kind of made me look around and go, we should be able to do better in science and in medicine and neurology, where so many of our conditions, we don't have a cure. We have treatments, we have therapies, and we have ways to try to make life better. That especially in people with neurologic illness, we should be better with communication. We should be better with resources. And that kind of anger at what they had gone through kind of drove me to say, like, we need to level up. So
that's awesome. It's amazing how our life experiences make us so passionate about things. That's great. Okay, I'm going to take a step back and give our guests your introduction, your wonderful, wonderful introduction. So, Dr. Jory Fleisher, MD, MSCEFAAN. Did I say that right?
Just collecting all the letters.
She is a movement disorders neurologist and associate professor of neurological sciences at Rush University Medical Center. She co-directs the Rush Parkinson's Foundation Center of Excellence and leads the Rush Advanced Interdisciplinary Movement Disorder Supportive Care, or AIMS for short, clinic, Cure PSP Center of Care, and Lewy Body Dementia Association Research Center of Excellence. Dr. Fleisher completed her neurology, global health equities, movement disorders, and epidemiology training at the University of Pennsylvania. She has additional training in palliative care, health services, and implementation research and advocacy leadership. Supported by the National Institutes of Health, Foundations, and Philanthropy, Dr. Fleischer's own research focuses on designing and implementing novel models of care and support for people living with neurodegenerative disorders. She is also a co-investigator on several national NIH-funded studies in PD dementia, DLB, and improving emergency department care and transitions for people living with dementia. Wow.
That's a mouthful.
I look at you and I just see like this just calm, presence, and you are just a ball of fire.
Thank you.
I love it. Okay, so the first question I want to ask you, Dr. Fleischer, is what is Parkinson's disease? What is actually taking place in the brain?
So it's a great question. Parkinson's is a progressive neurologic illness, meaning it's something that starts slowly. So it's not overnight you wake up one morning but it's a process, and we don't understand what first causes it to start, but different groups of brain cells that produce dopamine, which is a chemical that helps us move, it helps motivate us to do actions. These brain cells that produce dopamine start to die off long before they should. So one myth is that this is kind of normal aging. But that's just simply not true.
Mm-hmm.
There's something going on that's making these cells kind of shut down. And because of that, we see these classic symptoms, which people often hear Parkinson's and they think a tremor,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is true, but about 30% of people with Parkinson's never actually have a tremor.
Wow.
So it's not just tremor alone, it's slowness of movement, it's stiffness of the muscles, often sort of facial stiffness. So
Mm-hmm.
people just kind of look like they've lost their facial expression, or they might look depressed. You might look at them and think, they're not showing emotion. And so, maybe they're not cognitively with it. But that's actually not true. And it can be really distressing to them and to family. And changes with walking and with balance. So people start to catch a foot on a curb, they start to fall for different reasons. So we think of it as a movement disorder because those dopamine producing cells help with movement. But the more we've learned, it's actually much more than a movement disorder. Sleep is affected, mood is affected. People who were never depressed before or never anxious before now, will leave an extra 2 hours before they need to be somewhere because they're so worried about traffic and parking and what are they going to do? It really takes over a lot of a person's life, and it can be hard to figure out, like, what of this, how do these pieces all fit together?
Mm-hmm.
It affects bowel and bladder function. So people who were never really constipated before now have to kind of plan their day around when are they going to the bathroom and how long is that going to take. And if you live long enough with Parkinson's and nothing else gets you in the meantime, it can affect thinking and memory. People can develop hallucinations. So calling it a movement disorder kind of undercuts a lot of the things going on.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the really important thing is there's so much that we can do.
Wow. I actually, thank you. First of all, thank you for explaining that, because I never knew everything that it entails. Even when I learned about it in nursing school, we cover certain diseases, but certain diseases we kind of just brush over them. So when it comes to neurological disorders, stroke was like the big thing we learned about because
100%.
it's more common.
Yeah.
So I never never knew exactly what it does and how it affects people.
And I mean, you're not alone, because nursing school, similar to medical school, we have 4 years of medical school. We had about 20 minutes on Parkinson's. That was it. And when you go to residency as a neurologist, right, we're supposed to be the people that know about this. Most of neurology training is inpatient. So it's the same. We're seeing stroke, we're seeing multiple sclerosis flares, we're seeing different things that come in on the inpatient side, which means that when people are presenting with symptoms, even to an outpatient neurologist, that neurologist's knowledge of Parkinson's might be based on that same 20 minutes that they got in med school way back when.
Right.
And the nice thing is we learn more as time goes on. We've got better answers than I heard in med school. But, often people aren't keeping up as much. And so there's a lot of misinformation out there about Parkinson's.
Let me ask you this before I go to the next question. So because of this, is it often misdiagnosed or like underdiagnosed?
It is.
Okay.
Because people can present with any of these different symptoms and not necessarily in a particular order. So often it could be that someone who their mood was kind of stable. I mean, normal ups and downs that a person has, but in their 40s or 50s, they get diagnosed with depression. Or maybe they don't even get diagnosed, but their mood is changing. They're noticing, or family is noticing, that they're just not deriving as much joy, right, from usual things, or they're much more anxious than they were. And they might maybe go see a primary care doc or their family doc. They might see a therapist, but they might just kind of hang out with that depression diagnosis. And once we're dealing with that, then maybe there's a slight tremor, but that's, it's not at the top of our mind, right? Or we're changing our walking, but we need to focus on this depression thing. And it can be easy to kind of anchor on one symptom and brush aside some of these others, and no one is kind of scaling back and going oh, wait a minute. All these puzzle pieces actually fit together. And making that diagnosis, if you are a white man, you're much more likely to be diagnosed with Parkinson's much sooner. And if you are a woman, you're much less likely to be diagnosed, and there's a longer delay in diagnosis. If you are a person of color, you're more likely to have that delay in diagnosis. And there is tremendous intersectionality that we know that women of color, even if you read the textbook and you presented with a tremor and with slowness and stiffness, there's a delay to diagnosis.
Mm. Ugh, that's
Yeah.
so sad.
Yeah.
Right along with so many other things that, we kind of just get misdiagnosed or underdiagnosed. But that's very interesting that you pointed out depression. What it made me think of is we go through like different phases in our lives, like that can lead to us having different, moods and things like that,
Yeah.
which I can imagine on the medical side. As a doctor, that can be hard to diagnose a person. If you're actually
Absolutely.
doing a full assessment and asking what's been going on in your life, and they say, "Oh, I lost my dad a month ago," you can automatically hone in on that and say, "Oh, that's got to be you're depressed, you're grieving."
Right.
You know what I mean?
100%.
So it's tricky.
I think this is like one of the really tricky parts. You hit on it so well, is people can be depressed and not have Parkinson's,
Mhm.
right? And people can be constipated and not have Parkinson's.
Right.
It's, advocating for yourself and feeling a level of comfort with your healthcare team that you're seeing that, if something is going on, you feel like you can be honest with them and tell them, yeah, I'm depressed, but I just lost a family member,
Mhm.
right? And that is awful and understandable, and that's part of the grieving process. But if the depression is kind of coming up out of nowhere, right, and there's nothing that we can pinpoint it to and say, I'm going through this thing, that should just raise a flag to someone,
Mhm.
right? And if it's just depression alone, it can just be depression alone. But I would hope that the family doc you're seeing, the psychiatrist you're seeing, they're kind of just keeping that extra ear out to say, are there any other things going along with that?
Right.
So,
Okay, that's good. Okay, you mentioned that Parkinson's it's a slow growing thing. It doesn't just happen overnight. Can you explain what the stages of Parkinson's disease are and what the time frame is?
absolutely. Yes to the first one. I can explain that. The time frame is really tricky because we'll often tell people in clinic that if you've met one person with Parkinson's, you've met one person with Parkinson's. So this is a very personal, diverse condition.
Okay.
And everyone with Parkinson's is a bit different. So I have folks who have had symptoms for only a few years and are really severely affected. And I also have folks who've been living with Parkinson's for 30 plus years and are working and thriving and doing everything.
Wow.
So there is a huge range.
Okay.
But we do have a staging system. It really only takes into account the movement symptoms. So
Okay.
it's got flaws.
Yeah.
But so it's called the Hone and Yar staging system. And stage 1 means a person who's got movement symptoms just on one side of the body.
Okay.
So Parkinson's typically starts on one side of the body, and usually, as just a cruel and unusual trick, if you're right-handed, it's more common to have right-sided Parkinson's. And if you're
Of course.
left-handed, yeah. So it might just be a little bit of a tremor, could be a tremor in the foot, could be just some stiffness or slowness. A really common way that people will present is with a frozen shoulder. So they might go from physical therapist to personal trainer to orthopedic person, back and forth to just try and work out this frozen shoulder. And that can be the first symptom. But so stage 1, symptoms just on one side of the body, kind of to the person's own recognition, but also when they're examined, we don't see any stiffness, slowness, anything on the other side.
Okay.
Stage 2 means that symptoms have spread to the other side.
Okay.
They'll always be worse on the side it started with, but we're starting to see a little bit of slowness, stiffness. And we test for that in lots of different ways. We wiggle people around. We ask them to tap, do these big movements, and we're looking to see, does that tap stay big and fast? Does it kind of slow and get interrupted and get kind of smaller as it goes? Almost like someone has put resistance bands around and is kind of slowly tightening those. So instead of staying big and fast, it's getting smaller and smaller.
Okay.
So stage 2, both sides are affected. Stage 3, symptoms are getting a little bit more moderate and balance is starting to be affected. So in real life, that means someone is tripping or they're catching themselves we would test in the clinic. We do this terrible tug. We do this pull test where I stand behind someone and I say, not a trust fall. I want you to take a step back if you feel like you're going to fall, and I will pull them. We never let anyone fall. But we give them a tug back to see, like, if someone brushed up against you, if you were walking downtown, do you take that step back to catch yourself?
Okay.
Or do you kind of, stagger backwards? Or do you not even have that reflex anymore to catch yourself?
Okay.
So stage 3 is like we're starting to see some of that. Stage 4 is when someone needs to use something, a walker, a cane, to help them get around and move, or the arm of a loved one, or chair surfing and couch surfing. Stage 5 means a person is dependent on a wheelchair or is bedbound unless they're really helped by someone else.
Okay.
So we have these 5 stages, and people really vary in how much time they spend in each of those stages. One of my kind of personal soapbox is that for a really long time, we had a lot of focus on stage 1, 2, and 3. And it's a 5-point staging system. If you look at studies that talk about advanced Parkinson's, they're usually referring to stage 3.
Wow.
Yeah. So if we're calling 3 out of 5 advanced, like, what are we calling 4 and 5?
4 and 5?
Right. And the answer has been, we haven't been calling them anything, because we have, as a medical field, basically said, well, those folks, kind of like my aunt, right? There's nothing we can do for them. They are too far gone. And that is not true.
Yeah.
Like, that is not true. Folks are out there. They are often at home with family, with a care partner. And just because they can't make it into the clinic, we have come to the conclusion that either they're no longer there, or that if they're there, they don't want care anymore. Or that even if they came to us or we were able to come to them, there's nothing that we can do. And we have proven that wrong now. So,
wow.
Yeah.
We've come a long way.
We have come a
long way.
So, I mean, this disease was described by this British Dr. James Parkinson in 1817.
Wow.
He saw 3 people in his clinic, and he saw 3 people walking around the streets of London who he never touched. Right? So I joke with our med students, and I'm like, listen, go take the CTA. You can come up with your own, diagnosis, right? Like, just describe what you're
look
seeing.
At people.
Put the puzzle pieces together. But like, he described then the slowness of movement, the tremor, the trouble with walking. It's been in the last 200 years that we've recognized the depression, the anxiety, the constipation, the sleep issues, and we've come up with answers for a lot of those. We don't have a cure yet. There are smarter people than me working in thousands of labs across the world trying to come up with, how do we stop those cells from dying? How do we pick it up before the first tremor or anything and prevent people from having all those things downstream? But in the meantime, we also have way better treatments today, right now, for all 5 stages.
Right. I like that you said we don't have a cure yet.
Yeah, growth mindset.
That's right.
So
I love that. Okay, thank you so much for explaining. You explain things so well.
Oh, thank you.
Like really, really well.
You make it so, you ask all the right questions. You make it so easy to talk with you.
Okay, what are the barriers to accessing care throughout the different stages?
Such a good question. So I think so many things. Number 1 is recognition, right? As if we don't know what we're dealing with, we don't know whether it's normal. We don't know who we should be taking this question to, right? If someone notices a tremor, maybe it's just stress, right? I mean, we live in a very stressful world now more than ever, right? And so maybe it is just stress. But if something is persisting, for a while, we should, think about looking into it. Sometimes people will notice a symptom, they'll realize something's wrong, and denial is really huge.
Yes, it is.
Fear
Yes, it is
so huge, right? And so, it's very easy to just go, I know this thing is happening, but I'm just going to look the other way, and I'm sure it's going to get better.
Right. It'll just go away.
It's just going to go away on its own. And some things do, but if something is persisting, especially if it's there for a couple of weeks or a month, that tremor is probably something that we want to look into. Or changes in walking, right? If we're falling and we weren't falling before, if we're falling for any reason, that's not great. It's something to look into. So I think recognition, knowing who to take that problem to, having a healthcare provider who you trust, who you feel comfortable and you can get in to see and say, this is what's going on, what do you think? And have them take you seriously and listen. I think those are huge barriers. And then the knowledge about Parkinson's. So, like we talked about, in nursing school, you don't learn about it. In
Right.
medical school, you don't learn about it. I am always amazed by our allied health colleagues, like our physical therapists and occupational therapists. Someone goes in with that bum shoulder, and it's often the physical therapist that goes, yeah, your shoulder's tight. But also I noticed, like, have you noticed you got a little bit of a something going on here? You should see a neurologist about that. So
good for them.
Right? Like, gratitude for the whole community, and also recognizing that we need to educate our physical therapy and occupational and speech therapy colleagues, because they may be the ones to pick it up. We need to do better with our med students, our nursing students, because they're often out there in the community. They're at a brain health fair, right? They're at a free clinic for folks who are least likely to get diagnosed and need the most support and resources. So just getting the word out about what Parkinson's is and what it can look like, I think things like this are just invaluable.
Yeah. Spread the word.
Yeah.
We got to spread the word.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay. Oh, this is so good. Is there something we can do as young adults to decrease our risk for developing Parkinson's?
That's a wonderful question. So 20 years ago, the answer would have been no.
Okay.
Now, based on all kinds of research, we know that there are lots of different things that contribute to a person's risk for Parkinson's.
Okay.
Some of them we can't do anything about. So there are certain genetic mutations. Most of them, essentially, if you have that mutation, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to get Parkinson's. It increases your risk a little bit.
Okay.
Some people will have Parkinson's in their family and kind of wonder if they're at increased risk, but other people will be the first person in their family.
Okay.
We can't change our genetic risk factors. But we know now that, for example, people who are exposed to well water have a higher risk of Parkinson's.
Interesting.
Migrant farm workers have a higher risk of Parkinson's. And the connection between those things is exposure to certain pesticides. Pesticides that wind up in the water, pesticides that people are exposed to and breathing in. There was actually a paper that just came out, and it talked about how people who live close to golf courses are at a higher risk of Parkinson's. And everyone was like, oh my God, does golf cause Parkinson's?
Right.
Golf does not cause Parkinson's. Okay.
So it's what they're
Pesticides.
spraying the golf course with.
Exactly. That grass does not look like that naturally.
It's not that pretty for no reason.
No, exactly. Something is going on there, right? And it's not, I'm sorry, it's not putting on your polo that is causing Parkinson's. It is for all these different reasons. There are a lot of pesticides that have been linked to increased risk of Parkinson's. And so there's a lot of advocacy effort going on the national level to ban certain things so that we are reducing the risk in the population itself. But we also know that people who are active, physically active, seem to have a lower risk of Parkinson's, and exercising doesn't take that risk down to zero. But the folks who are active, their Parkinson's seems to progress more slowly. And even once people are diagnosed, I've got folks that are just lifelong couch potatoes. They were just not movers and shakers. From the time that we make that diagnosis, if you just start doing something, there is no one right exercise for Parkinson's.
Right.
The right one is the one that you will do.
Move.
Okay? Just move. Move and enjoy it, and do it with someone, have some accountability, something that you will stick with. It changes that slope of progression. So we know that kind of the folks who are never movers and not going to be movers, their Parkinson's kind of goes like this.
Okay.
The folks who are athletes and stay athletic, their Parkinson's seem to progress a little bit more slowly.
Okay.
And the folks who are not moving, their kind of trajectory is in the middle, and then they change and they start moving, they slow down that course. So it is never too late. I have never seen anyone, and I focus on folks with those late stages, folks who are in bed. I have yet to see a person with Parkinson's who we can't find some way for them to move.
Wow.
And the benefits on mental health and the other symptoms are huge. So moving now without a diagnosis of Parkinson's, moving when you have a diagnosis of Parkinson's, it all makes a difference.
We keep hearing this with every illness we cover.
Yeah.
That it's people are more so going more plant-based.
Yeah.
So kind of staying away from, and I don't know if that may be sprayed with pesticides too. I won't say plant-based, but more organic.
Yeah.
and people are saying move. It's like anybody you ask, any doctor in any specialty, they say exercise.
Right?
Exercise will decrease your risk for developing so many things.
I think we have this really interesting mentality in America, and I think it's, a lot of places. It's like we want a really quick, simple fix, right? So like we want a pill that's just going to make it go away. But also, we're very suspicious of pills. I would rather take a supplement. A supplement,
That is so true.
A supplement is a pill that no one is regulating.
Right.
They're all chemicals, right? Water is a chemical. Kale is a chemical, right? So like everything's a chemical, right? Like we would like a pill, but we would not like a pill, that's been touched by. And so like, okay, don't do the pill, do exercise. Well, that's a lot of work. Like, yes.
We can't please
right?
us.
I mean, I think it's, we need all the things together, right? And we know we can sort of say, with a pill, okay, this chemical is going to this area of the brain and it's working on this system and it's going to do these things and it's not going to do these things. Cool. Exercise is really, it can be tricky to study because it's very hard to say, like, okay, if I get on my bike and I, pedal like at this %, where in the brain is that changing something? Show me, it's harder to prove in people, but we know that it's doing a ton of different things from other research, from looking at poor mice that we put on a little hamster wheel and we make them run around. And then they look at what changes in that mouse's brain. It's a lot of different things. It's keeping those dopamine producing cells that are dying off in Parkinson's. It basically throws them a life preserver. It keeps them around for longer. It helps them kind of connect with their neighboring cells in a better way. And like when the brain is hard at work, right? If you think about like a car with exhaust fumes, there are these free radicals, they're kind of waste products produced. Exercise helps clear that stuff, right? It switches over from like a gas-powered vehicle almost to an electric-powered vehicle, right? There are no fumes kind of coming off of this. Exercise helps with that. So there are a lot of different ways that it helps. It doesn't mean it's easy. And if someone has not been an exerciser, I mean, I tell my folks, like, 5 minutes. Like, what can you do for 5 minutes? And that could be you put on your favorite TV show and just during the commercial breaks, if you're not streaming, right? Like, I don't know. Or you pause for 5 minutes, right? But like just during a commercial break, just get up and march in place. It's not fun.
Yeah,
right?
but
it's something.
It's something.
Dance with your kids, right? Put on music. Do something that brings you joy and build up from that 5 minutes.
That's good. That's good. Okay, you kind of answered this question. Does geography have anything to do with Parkinson's? Okay, I'm going to skip that because you literally just talked about that. Next question. How do social determinants of health affect people's ability to be diagnosed and receive treatment for Parkinson's?
This is maybe the most important question, right? Is we know a lot about the basic science, but there's been this huge gap because if you are that white man with clear Parkinson's symptoms who looks like every picture of Parkinson's online, you're much more likely to get the care you need. It's only been in the last 20 plus years that we've even changed the dialogue of everyone gets Parkinson's, right? And so if you are a woman, your symptoms are more likely to be blamed on anxiety or depression. You know your body, right? This is the same conversation we have in maternal health. As if you know something feels off, go tell someone. And if they're not listening to you, go get a second opinion. Because you deserve to be heard and you deserve to be listened to and you know your body, right? So I think that is huge. We know that people of color, I mean, and some of this is just bias in the healthcare system that's so deeply rooted. But in that 20-minute lecture I got on Parkinson's, I can promise you every picture that was shown was an old white man. And so, I mean, we were told Black people don't get Parkinson's. And then I will tell you, there was no proof. You have to go looking for proof. You have to care and go seek it out and then realize, oh, wait a minute, we were completely wrong. Because Parkinson's doesn't see color. Parkinson's affects everyone. And so, I mean, I spent time in Botswana and I work with teams in Zambia. There's Parkinson's everywhere, right? And so it is incumbent upon our healthcare system to recognize that and to realize when we see someone in front of us that we are not seeing color, we are seeing symptoms regardless of what the person in front of us looks like. and we're making that diagnosis. That's number one.
Absolutely.
It shouldn't be on the person to convince their doctor of what they have. It should be on the doctor and the healthcare system to see the symptoms in front of us.
Absolutely.
I think that's huge. But also, do you have access to a neurologist?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have access to a movement disorders neurologist who has gone through residency in neurology, but then gone and gotten 1 or 2 extra years of training? I mean, we're very nerdy. It's all that we do is we just look at tremor. So I'm useless at a party because I'm just looking around and going, oh man, they're shaking. Like, did they know? Don't ask me to talk about football. Like, I can't. It's all that we do.
That is so funny.
But, but like that's who you want to see if you have Parkinson's, is someone who this is kind of all that we live and breathe. And we will have not only sort of the latest knowledge about what are the options, what are the treatment options, medication and otherwise, for treating all of the different symptoms, but also what's coming down the pike. And are there clinical trials, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's in the pipeline? What is better?
Right.
We've got great stuff now, but I want better.
Right.
The
best.
So I want the best,
Yeah.
and I want a cure, right? And until then, like, I want what is new and what's different, and I want my folks to have that entire toolkit available to them. So pushing and being vocal and saying, should I be seeing someone else? And
Mm-hmm.
trusting your intuition, as a person living with any symptoms and going, I think I need a second opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And pushing to see a specialist and recognizing that as specialists, we are clustered in certain areas of the country and we are absent in others. So if you are in Chicago, if you're in New York, if you're in DC, you got movement specialists.
Mm-hmm.
We may have a 6 or 9 month wait to get in to see us because Parkinson's is so common. But if you are in a Dakota, if you are in Wyoming, there are no movement specialists there.
Mm.
You may have to drive 5 or 6 hours to get to see someone, right? And so, I mean, that is a huge determinant,
Mm-hmm.
is just, are you in a rural area? Are you in an area of the country where we just don't have enough neurologists, period,
Mm-hmm.
let alone a movement disorder specialist? So I think in those situations, knowing, finding a family doc that you trust and reaching out to the broader community.
Mm-hmm.
The Parkinson's patient and advocacy community is just stronger and stronger every year.
I love that.
I tell my people, this is no one ever asked to be part of this community.
Right.
But now that you're here, just wait until you meet everyone, because so many folks get the diagnosis and they kind of adjust,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there's that adjustment period. There's a grieving period of, this is not what I planned for.
Mm-hmm.
This is not what life was supposed to look like. And we go through that together and we get on meds and we start exercising, we do all the things, and you kind of come out the other side of that. And then there's so many people who look around and go, this should have been easier. This should have been better.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't fix how it was for me, but I'm damn sure I'm going to fix it for someone else.
Absolutely.
And they use that diagnosis as a positive inflection point in their lives. And they are the movers and shakers,
Mm-hmm.
pun intended, that they are changing the game.
That's awesome. And that you talked about motivation, to get up and move. We need support groups. We need communities.
Yes.
And, because you feel, when you receive a diagnosis, you feel so isolated.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm the only person living with this.
Yes.
But when you get out and you're around other people living with the same thing, you learn so much. We learn from each other. That's the importance of community.
Yeah. Jasmine, you're so spot on, right? This is a hugely isolating condition. I mean, having any medical diagnosis can be really isolating. But when there are physical symptoms that can lead people to think something else,
Mm-hmm.
right? Our folks will often say, I'm walking around in trouble with my gait and I get stopped because people think I'm drunk.
Mm.
Or I look like,
I hate to hear that.
facial expression is decreased. And so people just treat them as if they're kind of checked out.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so connecting and overcoming that isolation, we know that social isolation and loneliness are way higher in Parkinson's than in other conditions.
Mm.
So I think it's so many different factors coming together. And the only way that we overcome that is we build resources, we share the resources that we know about, and we connect people and let them know that they're not alone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So speaking of resources, what resources are available for those who are caregivers of patients with Parkinson's?
I'm so glad you asked this. So I'm just going to name drop some of my favorite organizations that are out there in absolutely no particular order.
Okay. Let's
And
hear it.
the wonderful thing is there are so many of them, and they're all doing complementary work. And like, you don't need to be just this foundation or that foundation person. You pull from all of them. Okay. So Parkinson's
That's good.
Foundation is out there, parkinson.org. And they have a huge amount of resources for everyone living with Parkinson's, for care partners with Parkinson's. And they have made a concerted effort, especially in the last decade, to recognize the social determinants of health, recognize the communities living with Parkinson's who have not received the care that they have needed, including our individuals of color, our care partners of color, Spanish-speaking folks. So they've got entire resources dedicated to Black and African-American individuals living with Parkinson's. They've got Journey in Color events specifically for the Black community, because it's really isolating to go to a support group and everyone else is white.
Right.
And we hear that all the time. So Parkinson Foundation is tremendous. Michael J. Fox has taken his diagnosis, and his foundation, I believe, is the largest source of foundation-funded research. I mean, tremendous amount of work, and they have a ton of resources. Davis Phinney Foundation. So Davis Phinney was an Olympic cyclist, and he's been diagnosed with Parkinson's. His wife is an amazing care partner and supporter of him. She was also an Olympian, like, talk about power couple.
Wow.
They founded a foundation, and they really focus on living better with Parkinson's today.
Okay.
They're saying we're not going to be the ones that fund the cure. We're going to be the ones that help people with this right now do better. And they have tremendous resources. So I got to work together with them on a care partner training program. It is free. It is open to everyone. It's online. It's all on your own time. And you register, and it's conversations like this, but on Zoom, with Polly, their CEO, and I about all kinds of different things in Parkinson's. And then finally, I will give a plug for my own third baby, which is we recognize that especially as time goes on and people with Parkinson's can develop cognitive changes, they can struggle with concentration and attention and decision making. They can develop these fluctuations where, like, we could have a conversation just like we are right now, and 5 minutes later, if I'm someone with Parkinson's dementia, I could have a hard time getting my words out. And you could look at me and go, like, where did she go? She's just kind of dazed, still here, still, present, but really kind of different. It's almost like someone bumped up against a dimmer switch in the brain and just kind of like stuff dimmed a little. It's not in my control. It's not in the care partner's control. And we just kind of have to wait out these fluctuations. So people can develop those cognitive changes, these fluctuations and hallucinations. And we realize that there is really nothing helping our care partners in those more advanced stages. So over the last 10 years, together with people with Parkinson's and people with Parkinson's dementia and care partners, we worked on creating a program for care partners helping other care partners.
Wow.
And so
That's awesome.
We have the first, it's still crazy to me to say this, we have the first NIH-funded care partner intervention for people who are taking care of a loved one with Parkinson's, with any cognitive changes, Parkinson's dementia, or Lewy body dementia, which is this related condition. And everyone gets something. We've got care partners who are no longer caring for their loved one. Their loved one may have passed, and they want to share and make this journey better for someone else.
That's awesome.
Right?
That is so awesome.
It's harnessing that lived wisdom and saying, yes, like, you know so much more than you think you do. And like, all of this was not for naught. And you are the expert, and let us pair you up with someone who's just going through that diagnosis. And you can be that shoulder to cry on, and that person that goes, actually, you know what, I wish I would have known this. Or wait, here's a simple thing that I found that can help with this, putting on socks or getting up out of the car, right? And you make that a little bit better for someone else. So.
Wow. Oh, that is so awesome. First of all, thank you so much for everything that you're doing in the community. Thank you for sharing those resources. Thank you for explaining Parkinson's to me.
It's my pleasure.
I was like a little embarrassed, but I'm like, you know what? This is how we have to get the conversation started.
Yes, there's nothing to be embarrassed about.
Yeah, right? Nobody talked. We didn't learn, and I've seen. I've taken care of hundreds of patients, and there's been times where, oh, I noticed something and I have to speak up. I have to advocate. We can't advocate for each other, for our patients, for our loved ones, if we don't know
Exactly.
what it is, if we don't know what we're looking for. So just educating caregivers and offering that support. They need support too. It's hard to care for someone who is, especially someone like stage 4, stage 5,
Yes.
that's completely dependent on you.
Yeah.
And some people just don't get it because they don't live.
Yep.
They're not walking in your same shoes, so.
And we talk about sometimes, this is like every day in clinic, is I'll ask my person with Parkinson's to get up and walk for me. And they will push themselves up from the chair and they go strolling, and family is like,
you don't do that
they
at
don't
home.
walk like this at home. What the? Right? And it is like, this is a known thing. And I always tell family, I'm like, I know, it's okay. I get it. Right? This is why I did home visits for years and years and years in New York and here in Chicago, was recognizing that what I see in the office is not reality.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what our care partners are living with. And often, the adult child might come visit, a friend comes to visit, someone comes from out of town, and that person with Parkinson's is able to kind of shine.
Mm-hmm.
And then the door closes, and the care partner is left to kind of pick up the pieces when they kind of slump from that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's often this like disconnect of you, other family members, you're not seeing reality. And people can kind of question, like, are they faking it? Like, are they messing with me? And it's not. It's this disease. But until we normalize and validate and educate about that, it can be so isolating.
Yeah.
So,
wow, Dr. Fleisher. That is that's all the questions I have for you today. But I just want to thank you again so much for the work that you do, for sharing your resources with us. So if you know anyone living with Parkinson's or a caregiver, we there's some wonderful resources out there for you. If you have symptoms, say something. If you see something, you feel something, say something. Advocate for yourself, advocate for your loved ones. Again, Dr. Fleisher, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
Jasmine. It's just been a joy. Thank you. Thank you to the community.
You.
Thanks to people watching.
Thank you. So that's it for now. And thank you guys for joining us on Thrive Alive. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Hey,
Thrive Alive family. This is Jamelia. We want to hear from you about what you learned from this episode and guests that you want to see in the future. What we want you to do now is take 1 minute to fill out our Thrive Alive community survey. You can click the QR code on your screen or go to the link bit.ly/Thrive Alive survey to take our Thrive Alive community survey. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.